Hello and welcome to Self Power Now, where empowering women share their stories and advice about life, work, happiness, love, and success. I'm your host, Debbie Giussoni, and I'm so glad you're here with us today. So sit back and enjoy the show. My guest today is Stephanie Marohn. Stephanie is the author of 10 books, including What the Animals Taught Me, Stories of Love and Healing from a Farm Animal Sanctuary. She's also written 7 books on natural medicine and the anthologies, Audacious Aging, I need to read that one, and Goddess Shift, Women Leading for a Change. And in case you're thinking of writing your own book, Stephanie's Angel Editing Services, specializing in books on mind, body, spirit topics, has been operating since 1993. And as if that's not enough, Stephanie also has a practice in animal communication and energy healing for animals. And she currently runs the Animal Messenger Sanctuary, a safe haven for farm animals. Wow, Stephanie, welcome. You are a busy woman.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It's wonderful to be with you here today. And yes, a little busy, but I love it all.
And you love the animals. We can learn about so many topics from you. But today, I really want to discuss your work with animals. As you know, I'm a huge animal lover, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are too. And for over 2 decades, you've been so helpful to me personally with my multiple generations of dogs. And normally we have phone conversations all the time. And this is on a video sort of Zoom call. So I want to just tell the listeners that there will be some pauses because Stephanie is in a very, very remote town in California, and the Wi-Fi there is just a little bit slow. So bear with us as we have this conversation, and Stephanie gives us, imparts all this wonderful knowledge on us. So I believe we are all connected in spirit, and it's not unfathomable for me to consider that some people have a gift and can communicate with animals. Stephanie, tell us how it all started with you. Were you communicating at a young age? Did you learn how to do it? How did it all come about?
That's a really good question. And I came into this world with a deep, deep love of animals. I'll just tell this story. The communication that was direct came later, but I'll tell this story to start us off. So when I was 4 years old, we lived at a Quaker boarding school. My parents were teachers there, and we lived nearby. And I would go, my mother would be teaching and I would be wandering the campus. I can't believe they let a little 4-year-old do that. And maybe they didn't expect me to be doing that, but I did. And so did a bunch of other little kids. But there was a pig pen, a very huge, it's not a pig pen like you would probably picture it. It was a very big field. There were tall grasses with paths all through it, and the pigs would go along those paths. And they were really big. They were full-size pigs. And I would climb the fence into that area because I loved the pigs. And I would go wandering through there. And my mother forbid me to do this because one of the little boys told on me. And she forbid me to do this. And I just could not observe that ban. I just had to go in with the pigs. And
well, she probably thought you weren't safe, right? She probably
Exactly.
thought you weren't safe. At 4 years old, you're not so big. And a pig is a lot bigger than that.
That's exactly right. And I was I would say I was an obedient little girl. So if my mother told me not to do something, I usually listened, but I could not listen in this case because I had to be with those pigs. And I still have this image in my head of walking along the path one day, and a big, huge sow came toward me from the other direction. And I give this story on my website, that we just stood and looked at each other, and there was such a connection. I wasn't scared at all. So that's an answer to your question of I came in with this connection with animals, and I had it with all the animals in my life. And when we were growing up, there were lots of cats and dogs and other animals, and I had a deep connection with all of them. I would say the communication part did not start, or I should say I didn't hear it until I did my own healing. I had a lot of trauma to recover from and heal from. And when I did that, and it's always more, of course, but when I got through a lot of that, the communication just opened up. and I hear all kinds of messages from the animals. And just one little example that even when I'm not expecting it, it really helps to create create a sacred space for the connection to happen. And that's what I do in the sessions that I have with people, like with your dogs, Debbie. But it also comes to me randomly as well. So here's just one quick example. I had an intern who came to work at my animal sanctuary, and she had an emotional service dog with her. This was a standard poodle, a very well-adjusted dog, very happy dog. And we took a break from the work we were doing outside, and we came inside. We were sitting in the living room. This poodle came and sat right in front of me, and I heard clear as a bell, "Where is my sister?" And I asked the person, I said, "Does she have a sister? And what's the story there?" And she said, "Oh, yes, they were separated. The sister was sent to live on a farm in the Midwest, so they didn't get to be with each other anymore." And I said, "Is there any chance you could take her to see her sister?" And she said, "Yes, we actually could do that because I'm related to the people that have her." So I really hope that this standard poodle got to go see her sister.
That's amazing. So, you could be just walking down the street and dogs will be giving you messages because they just know there's an open communication there. I'm really interested. You talked about you had a traumatic event and then some of this communication started to open up. I've had a lot of interviews on the show where people have had like a near-death experience and they've kind of like said, okay, I saw what was beyond the physical. And then all of a sudden I was given all this information and these codes or whatnot that allowed me to communicate with the non-physical realm. Was yours a similar experience? And can you talk about it?
No, it was not a similar experience. I know very well about that because I wrote a book at one point about those kind of experiences, but mine was ongoing childhood trauma. So the healing that I had to do was long-term. And actually, you could say it was long-term as long as I did talk therapy, which was very helpful. But when I started doing energy psychology, that's a lot faster. And that's when I made great leaps and bounds. I would say the connection with animals began to open up into hearing clear as a bell messages. I would say that was always there sometimes, but it became very consistent after I did all that energy clearing. So I also would say that you mentioned that my Wi-Fi here is not good. I don't have Wi-Fi. It's an internet hookup with a satellite because I do energy work. I can't have Wi-Fi in my house. So it's really interesting. I tried to get 5G at one point. I got sick immediately, nauseous, headachy. I had to just get it out of my house. And so I don't have Wi-Fi. And that's partly why my connection is the way it is.
Wow. So you're so extremely sensitive. And this is a good point to bring up because a lot of people are sensitive to what is it, EMFs or the EMFs and what some of the Wi-Fi and cell phones put out, some of us more than others. And so it's something to explore if you are having some issues. And one of the reasons why they say, connect your phone through use little earbuds instead of putting it up against your head and all that. So that's interesting. Yeah, I did not know you didn't have Wi-Fi. You're kind of old school there on the farm.
Yeah, as I said, I did try, but I think it's really important for anybody listening who's an energy worker, just watch out for that because it does interfere with your reception, your own personal reception in your energy work, I believe.
Yes, I do too. So we probably have a lot of listeners who have pets, regardless of what kind of animal they are, whether they're birds or cats or dogs or ferrets or hamsters. And so many times we look at our pet and we want to know what the heck do they want? How can we tune in to what they're asking us? And not everybody has that gift that you have of knowing, what your pets are saying. Are there ways that we can better tune into what our pets are trying to tell us?
Another really good question. I think one of the things that I find with many of my clients, and these tend to be people who are very sensitive because they're coming to me for energy work and animal communication, so they already have that orientation. But one of the things that people tend to overlook is talk to your animals and tell them everything that's going on. The more information they have, the better they're able to deal with their environment. It's like children. People often overlook this with children as well, thinking, well, they're just little. They don't need to know what's going on. Yes, they both
Or they
need to
can't
know. So if there's any
understand. They'll
stress or
say they
tension,
can't understand. Yeah. Mm.
exactly. And especially if there's any stress or tension or any change, explain to your animals everything that's going on and tell them when you're going on a trip, for example. Tell them way before you're going, and don't do it. I really urge you not to do it in a way that's, oh, poor baby, you're going to be all alone. No, very matter of fact. Okay, I'm going away for this amount of time, but I'll be back. And here's how long I'm going to be gone, 12 sunrises or whatever it is. I often speak in terms of sunrises because they know what that, they can relate to that. So I think the most important thing is to just give them information about what's going on in your world, in your life. And if there's tension, explain what's going on. You can even acknowledge your emotions. We're not perfect. We might suddenly yell at one of our animals and then say, oh, I'm really sorry I yelled at you. I'm so irritable today, and here's why I am. It just, the more information I have, the better the connection is. And then the other piece is leave quiet to listen. So if you're just open to listening, open to the quiet, you might be surprised at what the information that you get. One of the things to be careful of is to not project your feelings onto the animals, to not project your interpretations on the animals. Make sure that what you're hearing is not you, that it's a clear, separate piece of information. And when you attune to the different kind of messages that you can get, you'll see what's coming from them, what's coming from you. It does become clear after a while. It might be a little murky at first, but if you spend more time with it, more quiet, you'll get it that these are not your projections. This is something that is happening. And I also want to urge you not to be hard on yourself if you don't get any messages from your animal. It doesn't mean they're not communicating with you. It's a unique quality and ability, and it doesn't mean anything that you don't have it and that it's not happening for you. The more love you can project towards your animal, the more you're going to be getting a return of energy in whatever form it may be. So I often urge people just to go into their hearts, feel the love they have for their animals, and everything opens up when you do that.
Yes, that all of that is such great advice. I remember reading a book way back when. I can't remember what the name of the book was, but it was about communicating with your animals. And it said exactly what you're saying. Maybe it was your book, I don't know. But it said exactly what you're saying, in that communicate to them, right? Communicate to them, even if you're not getting anything in return. That's okay, because these are beings that are highly evolved in many ways in terms of communication. You can see, if you have multiple pets, that they actually communicate to each other very, very well without speaking a word. And one of the other things that came out in that book that I remember as you were talking that was key for me is not only communicate in words, but communicate in pictures. So if you want to tell them something, think about what that picture would look like, and kind of send that picture to your pet. Do you think that is helpful as well?
Absolutely. People often say that that's especially true with horses. I think it's true with all of them, but people comment on it often with horses, that's the language they speak, is in images. So I'm not sure that that's really true, because I've gotten different communication I've gotten words from horses and from donkeys. But I think it's really a great idea when you're talking about what's going on in the house to visualize what's going on, and they'll get it. And I also think that when you're connecting with your animals, they might not have anything they need to communicate with you. And if you're placing need on it, like you really need them to communicate with you, that's a dead end.
Yes.
So you can't have any needs or requirements or urgency or I really want you to do this. Why can't you do this? None of that. It's really got to be, you have no investment. You have no investment in the outcome. You have to let go of the outcome and let them be fully who they are. That's really what I believe is the point of communication with people, with animals, with nature, with any being, is really about opening for them to be as fully them as they can be with you. And that's the whole point of it. And so it's not about you, it's about them.
Right. And if you have dogs like I have that are very vocal, I've had huskies for over 25 years. And I've got some of the videos of them talking on my YouTube channel. You can just go to Debbie Giussoni YouTube channel. And then people put in comments and they're like, what are they trying to say? What are they trying to say? Because they go on and on and on. And I always say, I bet it was one of two things. Either, I want a treat or I want to go out for a walk. It's like, give me something I want. But I know that it's a lot more than that over the years. And we've had so many sessions. And I think it also speaks to the animal's role in our households, because I think that the energy animals bring to the household is so helpful to us. And it could really be a game changer in how we feel and process our emotions, especially if you live alone. So many people during COVID, during the COVID years had, adopted animals. We lost our last husky a year ago, and we decided to kind of hold off before getting a new puppy, which is coming very soon. And having had multiple dogs in our house for over 25 years, and then all of a sudden no dogs, it was quite amazing to see the difference in the energy in the house, and quite a process for us. They talk about empty nest syndrome. I definitely have the empty dog home syndrome, and it wasn't a really great feeling all the time. I think our pets are really here, as you said, if we give them love and open our hearts, they are really here to help us open our hearts and be more loving and happier and bring better energy into our lives. As you mentioned, it's just a matter of being open to that energy and considering them as beings that can actually communicate in words that we know and sentences that we know. Don't you think?
I do. And I also think sometimes the vocalization is just because they can, and it's a form of singing. So for example, my donkeys, they'll be, sometimes they'll just be singing, and I call it singing because it sounds like that. And I can get them to continue by doing some of that with them. And
yes,
they'll continue on.
I used to do that with my huskies too. Yes.
Yeah. So I think your huskies, I've heard you sent out a Christmas video at one point where they were singing. It was totally amazing. And I think it's the joy of singing. And, there's a view among some of the scientific community that birds only sing to get a mate. And then there's another part of the research that says, no, they sing as a group activity. They're a choir. And so they're all singing because they can, and the joy of singing. And I think that's a wonderful way to look at the vocalizations of any species. That I have a new pig on the animal sanctuary, and she has a whole range of vocalizations, and some of it really sounds like singing and humming. It's amazing.
That is amazing. Now, a lot of your work, though, is not just, I want to talk to my pet and just see what's going on in their mind. Most times you work with people that really are dealing with either, a medical or a healing kind of issue that they need help with, or something's, a behavior issue, and they don't really know what's going on, and they need to connect with the pet. Talk to us a little bit about the healing work that you do with the animals. And I know that's energy related, but it's all related in that communication as well, right?
Yes. And I work a lot with rescues because many people bring to me the animals that they've adopted, and that there's usually serious energy imbalance because of what they've been through. So the communication works a lot better if you balance the energy field first. So there's 10 points that I check on the animal's energy field to see how it's operating, what the state of it is. And it's based on chakras, some of it. There's 3 main points and then 7 primary chakras. And just by using a pendulum, I test those energy points to see, are they open? Is it compromised in some way? And often with the rescue animals, all 10 of those points will be off. And what that means is their energy field is not being fed in the way it should be. And that affects the physical health as well, because all of the organs of the body correspond to those points. And so the energy flow needs to be open and strong for the organ systems, the nervous system, the immune system to work correctly and optimally. And part of it is about relaxation. So if everything's really tense and tight, and a lot of rescue animals have hypervigilance, if that's going on, that's the stress response. And that means the body's in a state of cortisol flooding. And there's no way that all their systems are going to work really well when that is chronic, or that their behavior is going to be exemplary because they're operating on a deficit. So all kind of behavioral issues can come out. And I always say the animals have their reasons. There's a reason for everything. And we don't always know what that reason is. It's my job as a healer to find those reasons and to help restore them to balance. So both the energy work and the communication works to that end. And they often tell me what's going on. And sometimes they don't know. The animal I work a lot with beagles that used to be in labs. These are rescue beagles that were in research labs. There's tens of thousands of beagles are in labs right now being used in experiments. And this
Why do they use beagles?
Total PTSD coming. They're small and malleable. And
so
that's
sad.
PTSD for all of them. I know. And some of them are absolutely furious. Others are completely depressed, have given up. And the work sometimes takes a long time. I worked with one beagle on the East Coast for, I think it was 2 years, and he is doing great now. He's thriving. He's doing just great. He had a lot of fear to get over and anger, and he's doing wonderfully, which is great news. And then other ones need to know that they're safe now. They all need to know they're safe now, and that is never going to happen to them again. But then they need to be able to recover from that trauma and learn to trust. And that's huge. That is huge.
Oh my gosh, it just breaks my heart to even hear about that or any kind of abuse. I'm one of the type of people who I can't even watch a movie about animals that are in distress because I just go into a really dark place and sad place. So I get that. And what wonderful work that you're doing. And along with, the healing work, then first of all, they're just like people. I mean, when you're talking about them in this way, kids that have, gone through trauma, and they need therapy, and they need to talk to someone, and they need to feel safe, and they need to feel like they're wanted and they're valued. I mean, just like human beings, there's no difference in that way of wanting to be in the world. But I do know that as you're doing this healing work on the animals, sometimes some really funny messages come through. I know some funny messages have come through from my dogs as well, because some dogs really do have a really, a sense of humor, or the way they say things, and they just crack the owners up. Can you share some of those messages with us? Like I was thinking when you were talking about your donkeys, I'm thinking, I wonder what a donkey would say.
So I have it's kind of a different story on that note, but I just wanted to say for a minute that I'm like you. I cannot watch those movies. I cannot read the books where anything happens to animals, and actually children as well.
Yes.
But the energy work that I'm doing, I'm able to do this work and hear these difficult stories because I'm doing the energy work while I'm doing this, and it's helping me. It's clearing me as I'm going through this. So I walk away from those sessions not all depressed and upset. I walk away feeling good, and I'm able to just put all that aside. And that's remarkable because I'm very sensitive to any of the images of animals, something being done to them. So that's the good news there. So this is just a funny little story that it was really different. It wasn't so much voicing, but visuals as well. So I lost a sheep to a mountain lion out here. And of course, I forgive the mountain lion completely because we're in their territory. And I was told by a number of people, you need to get guardian dogs. And that these are dogs that will take care of the livestock and so-called livestock and keep away the mountain lions. So I'm standing out with one of my donkeys in the barn, and I'm putting hay into a feeder for her. And all of a sudden, I got this blast in my head, this word Daisy. And at the same moment that I got that, I didn't move. I was just standing there. And the donkey, her head jerked back. And I looked at her, I said, "Did you get that too?" And it was a clear yes. So we both got the name Daisy in our head, and it startled both of us. Daisy is the name of the dog that was coming to me. And that was the dog that I was going to get. So then I went to pick up the dogs. They were puppies, and they didn't have their names already, but I went to pick them up, and there was only 2 females out of the whole litter. I think it was 11. And two little dogs ran up to me. One of them turned out to be a female. I said, "Are you Daisy?" And I got a big, huge yes. And then I brought her brother too. I wasn't planning to get 2.
That happens. That's happened to me too.
Clearly. Anyway, that was one. And then I'm remembering the stories that are coming to mind right now, Debbie, are not the funny stories. So do you remember some that Loki said to you?
Well, I remember Loki, who, for our listeners, Loki was my last husky that passed away, our last husky about a year ago now. And he was just sort of a funny guy and very, very, very vocal. And he was with us for 16 years, which for a husky is really, really old. And I just believe that just like people, as he got older, he got wiser. And he started, when you were doing some healing work with him, I remember he started giving us life advice as if he was some sort of monk or something. And I remember one thing. I remember, a couple of things he said, like he literally said, like, be present and be close to the ones who love you. That's really important. And that was during COVID when you weren't supposed to be close to people. And he said, you could be close to people even if you can't touch them, which was such a wise thing to say. But there was one thing that he said that I thought was just hysterical. And it was like very profound. And the first part of it was very profound, but the second part of it was very dog-like. And he said something like, accept where you are in life. Unless you're in a bad house, then you should really try to get away. It was just so endearing. And if you knew his personality, you know that, yeah, of course that's coming out of him because he was just like that. And he was struggling with some of the same things we all do, humans do as we age, particularly when the body doesn't function as we want. And of course, with dogs, they can't get up or they can't walk. And that's just hell for them, And eventually I saw how he surrendered, into that aging process. And then that's when all the wisdom started coming out. And I mentioned up front that you wrote an anthology about aging, which we weren't going to talk about now, but now it's kind of coming to me. Maybe there were some key takeaways that you can share about that anthology that could help us all, because we're all aging, right, as humans, and we all have aging pets as well.
Yes, and that's another big area in the work that I do. People come to me with their aging animals, and I just want to add that it was such an honor to be part of Loki's process. It was such an amazing process, and just such a gift to me for me to be part of that and to travel that journey with Loki and with you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
In terms of the aging, Loki is so right. And there's with many of the animals, I think this is true of animals, people, acceptance is the biggest thing, but also acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It's we hear this all the time, accept what is. There's that, but there's also continue to challenge yourself. And there's a phrase I've been using lately that's one of the, I think it was Judith Orloff in one of the 365 days a year message books that they have a message for each day. And this one was begin again, always. Begin again, always. So it's really about, as you're aging, you're not saying you're sliding into decrepitude. I think it's really about continue to challenge your mind, to continue as always done, continue seeking, continue on your path, and you
and see,
accept some when.
yeah,
Go ahead.
see the wonder in every single day that you wake up, because every day is new and every moment is going to be different and new. If we can see that from, that almost like a childlike view of life, and see the gift that every day brings us, regardless of whether we're doing the same thing we were doing in our 20s or we look the same as we are in our 20s, because that's never going to be the case. So that's gone. That part of you is it's still inside, but the physical part is always changing.
And that's really true. And I also think it's really important to embrace our elder wisdom, like Loki embraced his elder wisdom, that we have a lot to share. And in this culture, this is really an anti-elder culture in many ways, but we don't have to subscribe to that. And the elders that I know are incredibly wise. And I love hearing what elder people have to say. And I think we're a lot more interesting looking even than we were in our 20s.
Yes. And something else that just came to me as you were talking about embracing your elder life, your elder body, and all of that, is I remember we were trying to do some healing work, and you were asking him, well, does this hurt? Does that hurt? Does this hurt? And he said, yeah, so what? But I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about life.
I remember that moment, and it was so great. And he was, he fit his name, Trickster Loki,
yes.
because he would often have these two-sided things to say, that there were usually two sides to what he was saying. I like that very much about him, and sometimes he'd just tell me to be quiet.
We have to respect that too. I want to just quickly talk about, well, not quickly, because I think it's so important, your sanctuary. Why rescue farm animals? Like, I don't think anybody knows that farm animals need rescuing. So that concept, and it is a nonprofit and people could donate, that concept of rescuing dogs and cats and pets are very common to people, but not farm animals. So tell us what that's all about.
Yes, that's exactly why I started it, because lots of people are rescuing cats and dogs and so-called exotics. There's a lot of people doing that. This was sort of I don't know, it's not the last bastion of enslavement, but it's one of the last bastions of enslavement. And what I mean by that is the industrial farm situation is absolutely horrendous. So the way that the animals have to live in those big agribusinesses, the big industrial farms, the big factories, horrendous, the way that animals are kept. I'm not going to go into it because I don't think we need those images in our head, but I think more and more people are aware of this. And that's the whole movement of, there's a lot more vegans in the world now, a lot more vegetarians in the world. I've been a vegetarian since I was 14. So I already had this orientation going. And
well, when you met the pig, right? When you were 4.
Yeah,
maybe that was
exactly
the precursor to say, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be in here with us.
That's exactly right. I hadn't thought of it that way before. Yeah. The pigs were grooming me for the future. Yeah. So I started the sanctuary. What happened was it actually started with a miniature horse, which is kind of an odd beginning because that's not technically a farm animal, although horses are. Somebody dumped her on my property because she was loose on the road and they thought that she belonged to me because there were other horses on the property. She was very excited to see the other horses. And then I found out she had broken her tether. It was a neighbor property and they were keeping her on a tether all day long. I began to see her from my window and I couldn't stand it. So I went down. People treat miniature horses like they treat dogs. No animal should be on a tether, but
yeah,
particularly no animal should be on a tether. Let's just leave it at that. And anyway, I went down and asked if they would like to have a home for this horse. And they actually would, because they knew this was not a good way to keep a horse. So she came to live with me and then she began to need things. So she foundered, which is from rich spring grass. It's a digestive condition and it affects their hooves. They get very sore hooves. It's painful. and they have to take it off the grass. And I said to the vet, well, what if I got some sheep? That's how it started. So it was really like the house that Jack built. I call it the house the goddess built. The house the goddess built, and went on from there, because then the sheep needed protectors, so donkeys, and we just went on from there. So now I have sheep, goats, donkeys, a different horse, and pig.
And how do
So
these animals come to you? How do you know that they need to be rescued?
Well, in the case of Carowin the goat, I have 4-H people emailing me. These are 4-H parents that are saying the animal that my child raised is now going to slaughter, and my child is really upset. I don't take those ever, because I do not want to support the whole 4-H movement, and that those parents need to look farther ahead when they agree to do this and not get their child into this situation.
Yeah.
So I don't ever do those. And I'm sympathetic with people coming into that situation, and it's a wake-up call, and that's wonderful, but I can't support that 4-H system. So the animals that come to me are the ones that need to be here, and the way they come is all different. One was, someone said, a UPS guy said, these 2 animals are scheduled for slaughter. Can you help? They were on a farm somewhere. There's 2 of my sheep. And then in the case of Carowin the goat, somebody saw him in a backyard in Sacramento, where he was just lying there. He couldn't walk. He was only a couple weeks old, and there were dogs back there. He was completely vulnerable. And so this person stepped in and called me up and said, can you take him? And I said, go to the people and see if they'll relinquish him. And yes, I'll take him if you can get him out of there. She did. And that is Carowin the goat. And it took 2 years of rehab of all different kinds to get him to walking. Now he goes over the whole property with everyone else, and he's such a happy goat. It was really a big success story. Yeah.
What amazing work. That is such a labor of love. And I know it's laborious. Is that the right word? Because it does take a lot of physical energy and a lot of your spiritual energy and mental energy and emotional energy. Last question, Stephanie, you're expending all this energy, helping to heal. What do you do to give back to yourself?
Well, it's not separate. When I'm out there working with them, it's my bliss. It's my spirituality, and I'm totally fed when I'm out there. And yes, I'm working hard, but it feels like I'm being fed. So when I come back inside, I'm not depleted. I feel nurtured and fed, and spiritually and every other way. And I love the physical work. My body loves it. It speaks to me on many levels. And I would say it's like my church out there.
It's your calling. It's your calling.
The animals, it really is. It's my heart work, and it's my bliss. And I'm just grateful that I was led here to do this, and grateful that I'm able to do it.
Well, I am grateful for people like you in the world that do it and that really walk the walk and talk the talk and help the animals. This has been such a delight speaking with you. Listeners, you can find this webcast and all the others, this podcast, on my website, or hear more shows, or sign up for free programs. There's a guide on a page called selfpowernow.com/guide. That page again is selfpowernow.com/guide. Stephanie and listeners, I wish you all the most wonderful day. Kiss your pets, love your pets. They'll love you back. And I hope listeners come back again and join us next time. Thanks for listening to Self Power Now. If you enjoyed today's show, please share it with others, follow it on your favorite podcast platform, and join our community on selfpowernow.com and receive 3 free happiness gifts. And while you're there, if you're looking for more ways to be happy, healthy, peaceful, and loved, check out my books and new online courses. Until next time, this is Debbie Jasoni wishing you self-power now.